Welcome to History American. This is a space for conversation and reflection, where we explore scientific, social, environmental, political, economic, and statistical topics, as well as current events and stories. In every episode, we analyze and break down key events to help us better understand the reality around us. Find us for free on your favorite platform. You can also support this podcast by becoming a supporter of this documentary series, or directly via PayPal or cryptocurrency. We accept contributions in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana. You can find all the details in the description of this content. Follow us, share, and join the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me today.
I am so glad you are here with us. So today we are taking a deep dive into something that, well, you and I have talked about off mic, but it is just a monumental piece of history. We are talking about the space race.
Oh, absolutely. The granddaddy of all technological races.
Right, but we are not just looking at the timeline of the Apollo missions. We are diving deeply into the massive web of conspiracy theories that claim the entire moon landing was a hoax.
And, tying it all back to what is happening right now in April 2026 with the historic Artemis II mission.
Yes, exactly. Because for you listening to this right now, we really want to set a specific mission for today's deep dive. It is about understanding the sheer, almost terrifying ideological desperation that fueled that initial race.
Definitely. Our goal today is to critically examine the skepticism around Apollo, impartially look at those theories, and figure out why, after more than 50 years, humanity is finally going back to lunar orbit.
I mean, to understand why we are going back out there today, you really have to understand the panic that drove us there the first time. Right?
Oh, it was pure, unadulterated panic.
Right. So let us rewind to the post-World War II landscape. We are at the very start of the Cold War. It is the United States against the Soviet Union. Capitalism versus communism.
The ultimate standoff. And I think what gets lost a lot in the history books is that space was not this noble, pristine arena for scientific discovery at first.
No, not at all. It was the battlefield.
Exactly. It was the ultimate high-stakes battleground. And it all stems from the apocalyptic weapons they were building in secret.
Right, because we are talking about hydrogen bombs here.
Yes. In 1952, the United States successfully develops the hydrogen bomb. And this is not just an atomic bomb like what we saw at the end of World War II. This is a thermonuclear weapon. The devastation is just, well, it's exponentially worse.
And then the Soviets get theirs.
Yeah, just 3 years later. In 1955, the Soviet Union develops their own hydrogen bomb, and suddenly the whole world is plunged into this terrifying stalemate.
Mutually assured destruction.
Exactly. If either side actually pushes the button, the retaliation is so massive that the entire world basically ends.
It is like, imagine you have two heavily armed neighbors and they just absolutely hate each other.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. And they both realize they cannot actually shoot their weapons without completely destroying both of their houses. So they try to prove who is better by, throwing heavy metal objects over the highest possible fence.
Hoping the other guy gets intimidated and just backs down. That is exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Because they could not fight directly, they fought proxy wars. You look at Korea or Vietnam.
And the stakes in those proxy wars were incredibly high, right? I mean, look at the Korean War.
Well, the Korean War is a perfect example. The Soviet Union supplied these highly advanced MiG-15 fighter jets to the communist forces.
And those jets were doing serious damage.
They were so effective, they actually forced the United States military to completely stop its daytime bombing missions.
Wow. So they are fighting on the ground, they're fighting in the air, but then they realize they need an even higher ground.
The highest ground possible. Space. But here is the thing. The connection between those hydrogen bombs and the space program is entirely literal.
Wait, really? Explain that connection.
Well, hydrogen bombs are incredibly heavy. To drop them on your enemy across the globe, you need a massive rocket. An intercontinental ballistic missile.
Ah, okay. I see where this is going.
Right. So the military engineers realize, hey, if a rocket is powerful enough to carry this massive nuclear warhead all the way across the globe, it is the exact same machine you need to launch a human being into space.
The physics are the same?
Exactly the same. Yeah. So whoever conquers space first proves their system is superior.
Okay, so they need to build these massive rockets. But to throw those metal objects over the fence, they needed brilliant architects. And going through the sources, this part is incredibly dark.
It is extremely dark. The moral compromises made here are just staggering.
Let us start with the American side. The lead architect for the United States was Wernher von Braun.
Yes, Wernher von Braun, a brilliant engineer, undeniably. But his past is, well, it is chilling.
He was a literal Nazi.
Yes.
Yes.
He joined the Nazi Party in 1937 And by 1940, he was officially an officer in the Schutzstaffel, the SS.
The SS, the same organization running the concentration camps.
Exactly. And during the war, Wernher von Braun developed the V-2 rocket for Adolf Hitler.
And Adolf Hitler actually called it a vengeance weapon.
Right, he did. It was designed to rain death down on civilian cities like London. But it gets worse. Those V-2 rockets were built using slave labor from concentration camps at a facility called Peenemünde.
That is just horrifying.
It is. Thousands of prisoners died from starvation and execution just building his rockets. But when the war ended, the United States Office of Strategic Services, which later became the CIA, they secretly brought Wernher von Braun to America.
This has completely swept his past under the rug.
Because they were absolutely desperate to keep his knowledge away from the Soviet Union.
Wait, let us just unpack this for you listening. The United States space program, the ultimate symbol of American freedom, was literally built by a former Schutzstaffel officer who used slave labor.
That is the reality of the Cold War. Pragmatism totally overrode ethics.
But the Soviet side is dark too, just in a totally different way. Their top guy was Sergei Korolev.
Right. Sergei Korolev's story is completely different. He was falsely accused of counter-revolutionary activities by Joseph Stalin in 1938.
By his own government.
Yes. Joseph Stalin sent him to a brutal Siberian gulag. Sergei Korolev suffered from scurvy, lost his teeth, had a broken jaw that never healed right.
And yet they pulled him out of there.
They realized they desperately needed him. They captured the German V-2 factories, but they needed a genius to run them. So they just released Sergei Korolev to run their entire missile program.
And Sergei Korolev was a total genius. I mean, the Soviet Union was completely dominating the early space race.
Dominating is almost an understatement. Sergei Korolev led them to launch Sputnik in 1957.
Which was just a little beach ball-sized sphere.
Yeah, just a metal sphere that beeped. But it absolutely terrified the American public. You can stand in your backyard and literally hear the enemy flying over your house.
And then they launched a dog.
Yes, Laika the dog. Also in 1957. The first living creature in space, though sadly she perished from the heat. And then the biggest blow, 1961. Yuri Gagarin becomes the first human in space.
While the United States is just suffering these massive humiliations on live television.
Oh, the Vanguard rocket in 1957. It lifted off just a few feet and completely exploded into a fireball.
And the press called it the Kaputnik.
Kaputnik, exactly. The United States was losing badly. The desperation was at an all-time high.
Which leads us to that massive, almost impossible deadline. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy steps up in 1961.
Yes, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy declares they will put a man on the moon before the end of the decade.
Which, when you look at what they had at the time, is just absolute madness.
They barely had the tech to put a man in orbit, let alone go to the moon. They ended up having roughly 400,000 people working on the Apollo program.
And Wernher von Braun builds the Saturn V rocket.
The Saturn V was a monster, 4 times taller and 100 times heavier than early rockets.
Yeah.
It used 5 massive engines.
But pushing that hard, that fast, there was a terrible human cost.
There was. We have to talk about the Apollo 1 tragedy in 1967. They were running a test, and they used a pure oxygen environment in the capsule. A single spark caused a fire, and 3 astronauts were killed.
It is just heartbreaking. But the Soviets were having massive failures at the same time, right?
Yes. Sergei Korolev could not get the budget he needed. He tried to build the massive N-1 rocket, but he had to use 32 separate engines instead of a few big ones.
32 engines. That sounds like a plumbing nightmare.
It was a disaster. It failed 4 times. One time, it caused one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in history. And then, tragically, Sergei Korolev died in 1966 from surgery complications because his body was so weakened by his time in the Gulag.
So the visionary behind the Soviet program is gone, and that gives the U.S. the opening they needed for Apollo 11.
July 20th, 1969. Neil Armstrong, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins.
Michael Collins is such a fascinating figure to me. He stays in orbit around the moon, right?
Yes. When he went around the dark side of the moon, he was the most isolated human being in the history of our species.
Meanwhile, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin are heading down to the surface in the Eagle Lander, and it is not a smooth ride.
It's not at all. Neil Armstrong realizes the computer is taking them into a boulder field. He has to take manual control. They almost completely run out of fuel before he finds a flat spot in the Sea of Tranquility.
And the computer they were using to do all this?
32 kilobytes of memory.
Less than a modern pocket calculator.
Vastly less than the smartphone in your pocket. But they did it. 500 million people watched it live.
It was the ultimate propaganda victory. But, and this is where we get into the really deep waters of this deep dive, that victory was so crucial to American dominance that it planted the seeds for the greatest conspiracy theory of the 20th century.
Exactly. The sheer desperation to win is what fuels the theories that the United States just fakes the whole thing.
So let us dive into the doubters. We are going to impartially look at exactly what these conspiracy theories claim because they are incredibly detailed.
To understand the theories, you have to start with the motive. Why fake it?
Right. And as we just discussed, the U.S. was desperate to beat the Soviets. But theorists also point out that the government had a long history of deception.
The CIA ran massive psychological operations. They secretly funded abstract art like Jackson Pollock and the Iowa Writers' Workshop.
Wait, the CIA was funding art?
Yes, to push American individualism as a weapon against Soviet communism. So theorists argue if they would fund art to win a psychological war, why not fake a moon landing?
And there is a much more direct example from the 1980s, right?
Yes, in 1984, under President Ronald Reagan, the Strategic Defense Initiative, also known as Star Wars, they literally faked a successful missile intercept in space using secret homing devices.
So if they faked a missile defense test to scare the Soviets, it is not a huge leap for someone to think they faked the moon landing.
Exactly. That is the historical precedent theorists point to.
Okay, so if they faked it, how did they fake it? This brings us to the most famous theory, Stanley Kubrick.
Yes, the legendary filmmaker Stanley Kubrick. In 1968, he released 2001, A Space Odyssey. He used top aerospace engineers to make it look incredibly real.
So the theory is the government saw that movie and said, hey, let us hire this guy to shoot Apollo 11 on a soundstage.
That is the claim. Theorists point to all sorts of supposed clues. There were rumors his wife confessed. There's a completely debunked video in 2015 of a Stanley Kubrick impersonator confessing.
And there's that whole documentary, Room 237.
Right, which claims his movie The Shining is his secret apology for faking the landing. They always point out the child, Danny, wearing an Apollo 11 sweater in the film.
So they have the motive, they have the director. Now let us get into the actual physical anomalies in the photographs, because this is where people really get stuck. First up, the waving flag.
This is the big one. The moon has no atmosphere, right? So there is no wind.
So why is the flag waving in the videos?
Theorists argue it proves they were on a drafty soundstage.
Okay, anomaly number 2. No stars in the sky. Space should be full of stars, right?
You would think so. The sky is pitch black in the Apollo photos. Theorists say they could not put stars in because amateur astronomers would notice if the constellations were slightly wrong.
That makes sense from a fake set perspective. Then there is anomaly number 3. The sea rock.
Oh, the sea rock. There is a photo of a moon rock with a perfect capital letter C on it. Theorists claim it is a labeled movie prop that someone accidentally left facing the camera.
Oops. And then anomaly 4, the shadows. This one always messes with my head when I look at the pictures.
On the moon, the sun is the only light source, so all shadows should be perfectly parallel.
But in the photos, they converge at weird angles.
Exactly. Theorists argue this definitively proves there were multiple studio lights pointing at the astronauts from different angles.
Anomaly number 5 involves the cameras themselves, the crosshairs.
Right. The cameras had crosshairs etched on the glass. But in some photos, the crosshairs appear to be behind brightly lit objects, like the flag.
Which implies they were physically pasting different photos together in a dark room.
Exactly. A clumsy composite.
Okay, anomaly number 6, no blast crater. The Eagle lander used a massive rocket engine to land.
But underneath the engine bell, the ground is totally flat. No crater. And there is no lunar dust settled on the lander's footpads.
Which seems impossible if you just fired a massive rocket into the dirt. And finally, the 7th visual anomaly, the mismatched footprint.
Yes. There is that famous photo of the deeply treaded boot print on the moon. But if you go to a museum and look at Neil Armstrong's spacesuit, the bottom of his boots are perfectly smooth.
So the tread does not match. Those are the photographic claims. But there are also massive questions about the broadcasts and the radiation.
This brings us to a very controversial figure, Bart Siebel.
Right. I remember this guy. He used to ambush astronauts.
He did. He famously confronted Edwin Buzz Aldrin and demanded he swear on a Bible that he went to the moon.
And Edwin Buzz Aldrin actually punched him.
He punched him right in the jaw. But Bart Siebel's main claim is that he found raw, unedited footage showing the astronauts using a circular window to fake a shot of a distant Earth.
Like they were just in low Earth orbit pretending to be halfway to the moon.
Exactly. And the reason theorists think they never left low Earth orbit brings us to the Van Allen radiation belts.
This is a huge point. The Earth is surrounded by these intense radiation belts.
And Soviet scientists believed you needed heavy lead shielding to survive passing through them.
But the Apollo capsules just had, what, 1/8 of an inch of aluminum?
Just a thin layer of aluminum. So theorists ask, how did they survive that radiation?
When you lay it all out like this, the missing tapes might be the craziest part.
Oh, the missing tapes. In 2006, NASA publicly admitted they had lost the original high-quality telemetry tapes of the moonwalk.
And their excuse was what? They taped over them.
They claimed they were likely erased and taped over in the 1980s to save money on magnetic tape.
I mean, when you look at the missing tapes, the weird shadows, the lethal radiation, and the fact that we had the motive to lie, you can really start to see why 20% of Americans believed it was a hoax in 2001.
It is a very compelling narrative if you only look at one side of the coin.
Well, we are going to look at the other side of the coin and debunk every single one of those doubts with hard science. But first, we need to take a quick break.
Kick around.
If you are enjoying this deep dive, please consider supporting our analysis work. You can become a supporter of this documentary series directly via PayPal or with cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana. All the details are right there in the description of this content. Your support keeps these deep dives going. Okay, let us get back to the science.
Yes, it is time for science to strike back.
We laid out all the anomalies. Now, let us impartially report the systematic scientific explanations for every single one of them. Let us start with the waving flag. If there is no wind, how is it moving?
It is all about physics in a vacuum. NASA knew the flag would just hang limp, so they built a special inverted L-shaped rod. There was a horizontal bar holding the top of the flag out.
So it was propped open, but why did it ripple?
Kinetic energy. The astronauts had to twist the pole back and forth to get into the hard lunar surface. On Earth, air friction would stop the flag from waving quickly. But in a vacuum, there is no air friction.
So the energy just kept it swinging like a pendulum.
Exactly. And once they let go and the energy dissipated, the flag stayed perfectly still for the rest of the mission.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the pitch black sky? Where are all the stars?
It was daytime on the moon. The sun was incredibly bright, reflecting off their white suits and the lunar dust.
Right, so it is just a camera exposure issue.
Precisely. To avoid washing out the photo, the camera used very fast exposure times. Faint background stars simply cannot register on film that quickly. You cannot see stars if you're standing under a bright stadium light either.
Oh, wow. That is a perfect analogy. Okay, what about the sea rock, the labeled movie prop?
This one is actually pretty funny. When researchers looked at the original film negatives, there was no letter C anywhere.
So where did it come from?
It was just a stray hair or a piece of fiber that got onto the image during the copying and developing process later on. It was a darkroom mistake, not a movie prop.
That is hilarious. All right, what about the converging shadows? Why are they not parallel?
2 reasons. First, the moon is not perfectly flat. It has hills and craters. When a shadow falls over an uneven surface, it distorts and bends.
And the second reason?
The wide-angle lenses they used? Wide-angle lenses distort images, making parallel lines look like they are converging at weird angles. Plus, if there were multiple studio lights, every single object would cast multiple shadows.
And they do not. Every rock just has one shadow.
Exactly.
Okay, what about the crosshairs appearing behind objects?
This is a photographic effect called blooming. When a bright white object like the stripe on the flag is overexposed, the bright light bleeds over the thin black line of the crosshairs on the film, making it look like the crosshairs behind it.
Ah, so the light just washed out the thin black line.
Exactly.
What about the blast crater? Why was the ground flat under the lander?
Once again, vacuum physics. On Earth, the air pushes rocket exhaust down into a tight column which digs a hole. But in a vacuum, the exhaust instantly disperses rapidly outward in a wide cone.
So it does not dig straight down.
Right. Plus, they had throttled the engines way down for a soft landing. And as for the dust on the footpads, the exhaust blew all the topsoil out horizontally at high speeds. Because there is no air to hold it up in a cloud, it just flew away and immediately fell back down far away from the lander.
So there was no dust cloud floating around to settle on the footpads.
Exactly.
Okay, the mismatched footprint. The smooth boot in the museum versus the treaded print in the photo.
This is very straightforward. First, Edwin Buzz Aldrin took that famous footprint photo, not Neil Armstrong.
Wait, really?
Yes, and more importantly, the astronauts wore heavily treaded lunar overshoes over their smooth, normal spacesuits to get traction on the moon.
Like space galoshes.
Yes, and to save weight for the trip home, they took off those heavy overshoes and left them on the moon. So the boots Neil Armstrong brought back to the museum are smooth, but the prints were made by the overshoes.
That perfectly explains it. Okay, what about the deadly Van Allen radiation belts?
The key was speed. They did not linger in the belts. They flew through them incredibly fast. NASA calculated that their total radiation exposure was roughly equivalent to a standard chest CT scan.
So the Soviet scientists just miscalculated the danger.
They did. It wasn't completely harmless, but it wasn't a lethal dose requiring heavy lead shielding.
And finally, the missing tapes.
That is just a tragic case of bureaucratic incompetence. NASA admitted they likely taped over them by accident because they were short on magnetic tapes. It is embarrassing, but it's not a conspiracy.
Okay, so we have debunked the anomalies, but there is actually an ultimate physical proof that we were there, right?
Yes. The Lunar Laser Ranging Retroreflector.
What?
The crews of Apollo 11, Apollo 14, and Apollo 15 physically left mirrors on the moon. Even today, anyone at an observatory like the Apache Point Observatory in New Mexico can shoot a laser at those exact landing coordinates.
And the laser bounces back.
It bounces right back. You can measure the beam returning. It is physical, ongoing proof sitting right there on the moon.
That is incredible. And you know, there's another logical point here that is just devastating to the conspiracy theory. The Soviet Union.
Yes. The Soviet Union had everything to gain from exposing a fake. They were tracking the entire mission via radar.
If the United States was faking it, the signals would have been coming from Earth orbit, not from the moon.
And if the Soviets knew it was fake, they would have shouted from the rooftops. It would have ruined America.
Their silence, the fact that they conceded defeat, is the absolute ultimate proof.
It really is.
So we definitely went there. Which leads to the biggest question. If it is real, why did we stop? We have not been back since Apollo 17 in 1972.
It came down purely to economics and changing priorities. In the 1960s, NASA was taking up nearly 5% of the United States federal budget.
5% is massive.
Today, it is roughly 0.35%. Once the ideological point was proven against the Soviets, the funding just evaporated.
So it was just too expensive to keep going for no political reason.
Exactly.
But now, in April 2026, the race is back on. Why now? What changed?
Resources. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty says no nation can own the moon, but they can use its resources.
And we found resources at the lunar South Pole.
Vast resources, rare earth metals, and crucially, water.
Water is a game changer because you can use it for rocket fuel, right?
Yes, you separate it into hydrogen and oxygen. The moon becomes a low-gravity gas station. And a new race has begun, primarily between the United States and China.
Because China plans a crewed mission by 2030?
Exactly, so the pressure is back on. Which brings us to the Artemis II mission happening right now.
Artemis II, it is a 10-day mission using the Space Launch System and the Orion spacecraft.
And it's heavily international. The European Space Agency provided the European Service Module, which gives the crew life support, power, water, and propulsion.
That is amazing. And the crew? Reed Wiseman, Christina Koch, Victor J. Glover, and Jeremy Hansen. But they are not landing, are they?
No, landing is for Artemis III and Artemis IV. Right now, this crew is doing a free return trajectory. They are pushing 7,500 kilometers beyond the moon.
They just became the first humans in over 50 years to see the far side of the moon with their own eyes.
And they lost contact with Earth for 40 minutes while they were back there.
I love what Christina Koch said about this. She said, "Human eyes are one of the best scientific instruments we have."
It is so true. We have all this technology, but we still need humans out there in the dark.
We really do.
But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Okay, lay it on us.
The Apollo missions generated decades of conspiracy theories based on grainy television footage and old photographs.
Right.
But as we return to the moon with Artemis, we are living in an era of deepfakes, AI-generated imagery, and instant global misinformation.
Oh, wow.
If 20% of people refuse to believe Neil Armstrong walked on the moon in 1969, how will the world process the high-definition reality of the Artemis landings in a society that no longer inherently trusts its own eyes?
That is terrifying, but it is such a brilliant point. The technology to fake things has caught up to the conspiracy theories. It is a wild thought to leave on. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me today.
It was my pleasure.
And to you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Please remember to subscribe, support the podcast, and share this conversation. Until next time.